And good morning. How's everybody doing? Dr. Chris Roddenberry coming to you live from Willow Springs, North Carolina. Good morning, John. Haven't seen you in a couple of classes. Glad to see you made it today. How's everything going? You doing well, my friend? Fantastic. Is Rosemarie with us today or is she working? Seems like she has a lot of stuff going on in the morning, so it's probably tough for her to make it in. But tell her I said hello. Oh, cool. She's in class as well. I said hello. Oops, I forgot to cut my speaker off. Sorry about that. She's in class. Cool. Hi, Rosemarie. Good to see you. Thanks for coming today. Looks like we've got a couple other people in the class. Cool. She's in nursing. Oh, she's in nursing class. Oh, okay. Duh, not this class. All right. Cool. Well, at any rate, looks like we have a couple of people here today. Not as many as I'd wanted. I was hoping to have a little bit more. Today's lecture won't take too long, I don't think. So hopefully I'll be able to let you out here a couple of minutes early today. Don't forget it is Thursday, so your discussion board, your final discussion board for this module is due tonight at 11:59 p.m. If you did the webinar last week, you don't have to do the discussion board. However, if you want the extra credit, finish the discussion board up tonight. And then the homework for this week, of course, is due tomorrow. Let's go ahead and get started with today's lecture, if we could. So if you remember, we're still in chapter 10. We're still talking about middle and late childhood, that period from the time we start organized schooling until around puberty, that middle childhood period. We talked about physical and cognitive development of children during this period on Tuesday. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about socio-development in middle and late childhood. So personality development and social issues related to middle and late childhood. Okay, oh, let's go ahead and disappear up here. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about gender differences. What you're gonna notice about comparisons of male and female brains is you're gonna notice that female brains are actually smaller than male brains, less volume. However, female brains tend to have more wrinkles or surface area than male brains. If you'll remember from Psychology 150, I told you it was the surface of the cortex area, the amount of surface area that was really important for processing ability. So while your male brains are going to be bigger, your female brains are going to have a little more surface area on them. Now, you're going to notice that the area in the parietal lobe related to visuospatial skills are larger and in males. Leading your males ultimately maybe to be a little bit better in some of your fine motor activities related to sports. You're going to notice, however, in your female brains, the area of the brain responsible for emotion show more activity in males than females. And females, as a general rule, are better at decoding nonverbals and other emotions than are males. You know what? I'm sure there have, John. There are individual differences in everything. You know what I mean? And even if males on average are taller than females, I'm sure there's a female out there that's taller than most men. You know what I mean? So that's a pretty good question, and I would imagine so. Good morning, Nicole. Good morning, Imani. Thanks to everybody for coming. Not a bad question, though. Is there a difference for intersexed individuals? Great question, Nicole. I don't think the research, typically, things are changing radically here recently in the last 5 to 10 years with people talking about intersexed people and variations in sexuality. I would say probably for the longest time, really research has denied or ignored, intersexed populations. So I don't think there's much of a research base out there regarding intersex individuals? That's a great question as well, Nicole. These are just broad differences, though, that you'll see in most of your gender comparisons, sex comparisons, John, Nicole, are going to be basically males versus females with no sensitivity or complexity to the question, just dichotomy A versus dichotomy B. Cognitive abilities. You're going to see that females typically a little bit better in verbal and writing skills, especially when it comes to interpersonal communication and verbal skills related to interpersonal communication. As I said, your females are going to be better at reading the room, to say decoding nonverbal cues and emotional information. Math skills, for the longest time, there were differences in math skills. However, those math skill differences have decreased to the point of not being much of anything. If you look down here, you're going to see males have better visuospatial skills. And if you see over here, it says females do better in school, but it's complicated. We're not sure it's related to sex as much as it's related to social conditions that arise out of either being male or being female. So it's, yeah, your females are going to do better in school, but it's really complex. Now, if you look at this graph underneath me, this graph shows you that males are better in visuospatial skills than are female. But does anybody notice anything interesting about this graph? Yes, males are better on average than are females. But what does this really? Exactly, John. Does this really show anything at all? Yeah, there may be a mean difference. We can point to a number, but really there is a lot of overlap. And I'm going to be quite honest, if you look at these verbal and writing skills, these math skills, these visuospatial skills, and to a certain extent academic performance, you are going to see gender differences, but they're going to look a lot like this underneath me. So really don't make too much of it. And actually, if you're looking at brain size as well and wrinkle size, I guarantee you they're going to show this kind of a relationship. So I like to include this graph right here so I can show you a very important point. Even though sometimes we talk about average differences among groups, between ethnicities, between sexes, what you're going to see is really there's more overlap than non-overlap, okay? The difference is small enough that any number of variables. Exactly, right, Nicole? And then when you go in to try and figure environmental causes and conditioning causes, really your ability to say that anything is genetic or biological, in my opinion, becomes kind of a ridiculous thing to even say. Great point, Nicole. Great point, John. Thanks for noticing that stuff. Rose is upset because you had a writing critical thinking she believes she's the better writer. We ended up getting the same grade. I don't want to even touch that, John, but I'll bet you that was a funny discussion at home. Remind me next week to pick on her about that in webinar. I'm going to file that one away, give her a little bit of grief about it. Okay, when it comes to socio-emotional functioning, what you're going to find is there are differences in aggression. Now, typically when people talk about aggression, they've always thought about aggression as this physical response that people do when they put up their fists and go to punching and kicking and yelling and screaming. That is one type of aggression. We'll call that physical aggression. Now, when you only look at physical aggression, the conclusion that people tend to come to is that males are more aggressive than are females. However, let's expand that definition of aggression and think about aggression as being something that can be relational as well. I can be mean to you interpersonally. I can not invite you with this group. I can talk junk about you behind your back to your best friends. I can engage in what we call relational aggression. And what the research seems to suggest is that while males may be more physically aggressive, what you're going to find is that there's more verbal aggression in your female populations. Your boys are going to fight and punch each other a little bit more, but the girls are going to say meaner things and maybe be a little bit more hostile to one interpersonally. So, you can't really say that males are more aggressive than our females, right? And from what I heard, my boys, I had two boys in middle school, but I heard that middle school girls can be especially brutal interpersonally to one another. And my boys really, other than having one or two physical bullies, they really didn't have that much of a difficult time socially or interpersonally in middle school. I think it's a little tougher for the girls. Good morning, Shame. Good morning, Ronique. Thanks for coming. Glad to see you could make it. We're talking a little bit about gender differences in males and females. And the one point, Ronique and Shame, that I wanted you to notice, that when we talk about these gender differences, they look an awful lot like this gender difference for visual spatial skills right here. While there may be an average difference between males and females, there is a lot of overlap in these traits. So maybe it's not even realistic to talk about these. So it's hard to say what these differences really mean. Good morning, Victory. Good to see you. Okay, so females, as I mentioned a couple of times already, females, because of more area in the brain responsible for emotional interpretation, females are going to be better at expressing and decoding and understanding their emotions. You're going to notice that your females are going to demonstrate more positive emotions, more cooperative, pro-social emotions as they get older, and especially than males, especially as they get older. And what you're going to notice is, as a general rule during this stage, females are going to demonstrate more self-control than their male counterparts. And actually, when you look at gender differences in psychological disorders, what you're going to find is that males tend to be more likely to have what we call externalizing or acting out style psychological disorders, and females tend to have more internalizing or anxiety and neurotic related disorders. So you're going to see this arising in emotional differences in socio-emotional functioning that really begin to appear in middle to late childhood. Now, here's the thing. The first year of your child's life, I have a horrible habit of internalizing until I explode. Right. And the thing is, a lot of times, John, men are socialized not to think about their emotions, not to express their emotions, to bottle up their emotions. And we do that until it comes out in an emotional volcano. I'm not sure if that's your case, but that's one thing that you will see with a lot of males, right? Now, here's the deal. Your first year of your baby's life, you're a comforter. 2 through 5 years, you're a shaper, right? Actively shaping your child. 5 to 10, we are now pulling back a little bit, and we are moving more towards a mentor manager rule. We're going to step away from the moment to moment, day to day decision making for our child, and we're going to begin to let them decide the things they do. They're going to spend more time with their friends outside of our personal control. And so the child is beginning to separate away from the child socially. This is a normal part of the development process. One of the ways in which I think parents make problems today is by being helicopter parents. You give your kids a strong foundation the first 2 to 5 years, first 2 to 5 years of their life, and then you have to start letting them go. The most important part of parenting is letting your children grow up and move away from you. A lot of parents really have difficulty with this. They get into that caring mode, protect my baby at all costs, which is what you do during the first year or two of your baby's life. But then you start pulling back and let that child begin to do things on their own and to evolve on their own. This really becomes important during this period. Your child goes away to school. It's time for you to let them get in there and duke it out with the other kids. You can't get in there being involved in every moment to moment interaction. You don't want to do that. So typically during this period, parents should be spending less time with their children during middle and late childhood. Kid goes to school, kid plays with friends. Now, what you're doing is you're, of course, stimulating and supporting your kids. Are these changes in the ages for each period based on the culture? Good point. Wow. Nicole, I feel indicted by that statement. You're right. I'm talking about this in a very culturally bound American moment right now, and Nicole has pointed that out. I'm talking about this as if this is a biological standard that you'll see. Probably what I should have suggested, Nicole, is that what you're going to see, at least in American West or in Western cultures, is you're going to see this. And you're right, Nicole, the degree to which parents and children separate is going to vary to a certain degree based upon culture. So let's see, Hispanic cultures where there's a stronger sense of family, you may see less of this than in, let's say, in American culture. Great point, Nicole. Oh, that's a brilliant point. So let's think about this. Most of us parents, that does, who were likely underprotected as a kid, does that because they were most likely underprotected a kid. Right, everybody parents to the mistakes that were made. So my parents didn't protect me enough, so I'll be overprotective. My parents were overprotected, so I'm going to give my kids freedom. That's probably a good point too, Imani. But you know, the idea here is that you're pulling back and letting your child begin to develop a little autonomy and independence while supporting their development, right? Now, here's the deal. Your child's growing up, so this idea of putting your kid in timeout, spanking your kid, you know, this is going to become a less reasonable strategy as you try to work through things intellectually with your child. You don't want your child to be good because they're afraid to be punished. You want your child to be good because they have learned to understand and appreciate good versus bad. So you're using less physical forms of punishment. You're using more discussion and insight at this point, right? Co-regulation. We talk about co-regulation because now you start giving your kid the day-to-day choices. What do you want to wear to school? What do you want to eat? What do you want to do after school? So now the child's starting to regulate some of their own momentary behaviors, right? And then, you know, at 12 or 13, your kids are going to start finding you, at least my kids started finding me a little less interesting than they did at 9 and 10 because they started being more interested in rap stars, athletes, and their friends, right? So now during this period, you're a manager, okay? You're managing their opportunities, you're monitoring them. You may help them get to play dates and fun activities, but you're actually stepping out of the moment-to-moment interaction of their behavior. And again, I should say this having been chastised by Nicole, I'll say that one of the things you're going to see here in our culture, and maybe in other cultures too, is that you're going to see a lot of this co-regulation still tends to be done more by the mother than the father. Now, of course, a good, strong family unit is important here. And in fact, some people who suggest that maybe infant attachment isn't that central to our development say really it's not so much about the infant attachment that you have, but the cohesiveness and confidence you have in the family unit that really determines a person's level of interaction. How confident do you feel about your family structure? So a structured and organized family environment is going to be a helpful thing for children's personality development at this age. And this is going to be positively related to their academic performance and to their likelihood of getting in trouble at school. So you as the parent, you're pulling back, you're not engaging in day-to-day activities. However, you're managing and monitoring their development, providing academic activities, and hopefully providing a strong family unit that gives the child the confidence to engage in these exploratory behaviors. Like I said down here, attachment is still important, but it expands beyond the primary caregiver. And it is related to the quality of child's socio-emotional functioning at this age. Right. That's a good point. You know, John Bear's having the wait till your daddy gets home kind of model is something that we always think about, moms being more nurturing and loving and dads being more of the rod, the spanker and the punisher. It doesn't have to be that way. Both parents both can be those roles. Typically, I think you're going to find that parents sort of gravitate one towards the other role, but it doesn't mean the mom can't be the authoritarian and the dad can't be the nurturer, or the typical dad is the authoritarian and mom is the nurturer, or they can both share those roles. There's no difference in who follows those roles. What is important, John? What is important? What is important is that the parents are on the same page about this, about behavior and management and development. If one parent punishes and the other parent goes behind their back and takes away that punishment, if the parents disagree on these rules, that is problematic. Who's the lawgiver and who's the nurturer doesn't really matter. In fact, both can be both. But what's more important is that the parents are on the same page. Yes, exactly, Ronique. Exactly. And here's the thing. And my wife, honestly, she wasn't as good at this as I was. Even if the other parent is wrong, it's important that you back them up in front of the child. Now, after you get done, after the kid goes to bed, you may have a conversation with that parent and say, hey, I think you were wrong. And let that parent be the one to change their mind. Don't ever undermine the other parent in front of the child. I know, right? Yeah, she's not even in the house. She's 15 miles away, but I'm still whispering that. And don't anybody share this broadcast with her. But really, the thing is, in my opinion, now, if a parent's becoming abusive or dangerous, you step in. But as a general rule, if you think your other parent is maybe being a little bit harsh or ridiculous or silly, talk to them about it afterwards. Don't undermine them in front of the child. Okay? So, like I said, during this age, your children are beginning to move away from you. They're growing up. Their friends and P. Diddy are going to, P. Diddy, I'm showing my age, are going to be more important to them than you are. You're going to be more of a manager, curating their social experience and their educational experience, but providing a strong family base that they can have, that allows them to have a sense of confidence. And provides them a moral compass. This is sort of what's important during this age. Now, I did not grow up in a divorced family. My wife grew up in a divorced family. In fact, her mom remarried twice, and she had two different stepfathers. And talking to her, these things just did not go very well for her. And I don't think she had a great relationship with either of her stepfathers. But you know what? There are a lot of families that go through divorce with young children. So it is a reality of the developmental process. Your book in chapter 10 talks a little bit about step families. Now, back in the day, 1940, 1950, 1960, especially when women did not have economic opportunities, divorce was less common. You had to stay together if you were a woman with children. You had no way of being on your own and surviving. The culture was a little more negative and judgmental regarding breaking up family units. These things have changed. Women now earn lots of money and can support themselves. Society doesn't judge divorced families and single mothers like it used to. So, with that in mind, divorce has become more commonplace than it used to be. Children are definitely going to be more likely to come in contact with a step parent. Half of all children whose parents divorce will eventually have a step parent. That is, their parents will get remarried within 4 years. Bizarrely enough, having one divorce increases your likelihood of having a second divorce. So 1/3 of all step family couples, 2/3 of all step family couples will get divorced, unfortunately. Okay, hold on real quick. I see John's got some comments. The Last Duel on Hulu. It's about a woman who's raped and decides to go against culture and speak out. Same with me and my mother. She became more of a friend than a mom. My stepmother is mom to me too. Cool. Okay, I will check that movie out. Nice, Nicole. It sounds to me like you've had a great step family experience. And hopefully, this closeness with your mom has also allowed you to, has not prevented you from becoming close with your step parents. That's cool. I'm glad you get along with your stepmom. That's nice. Sometimes step parents and divorces, there's so much emotion with a divorce and a breakup that sometimes exes will try to get at their former partner by making the children unhappy, by using the children. And I think, excuse me, I'm on my soapbox, and I think this is a really unfortunate behavior. I'm sure you have all of these emotions that are there when you break up with a romantic partner, especially if you've been married a long time and the divorce is nasty. But I just think it's sad when parents think that using the children as a weapon is a good idea. And there are some parents who unfortunately do that. All right, back to the regularly scheduled Brian. Right. So Ron, divorce is hard. Yes, it is. Now, typically, now, Nicole, question. Do you have a better relationship with your mother or your stepmother? Who are you closer to? Who do you fight with less? Who do you fight with more? Your mother or your stepmother, Nicole, if you would say? Which one do you have more conflict with, your mother or your stepfather? Yes, it does. Yes, it does, Ronique. Yes, it does. So, Nicole is going to be the common experience here. What they say, 75% of adolescents in simple step families say they have a close relationship with their step parent. And so Nicole saying that she has a good relationship with her stepmother is a common experience. Wow. We have more family type issues. So that means maybe more arguments with your stepmother. So I'm not sure. Nicole's answer kind of goes both ways. She says she's closer, but she says maybe she has more arguments with them. Children typically report better relationships with the custodial parent than their step parent. So, and it's a good thing Nicole has a good relationship with her step parent. They say good relationships with step parents is associated with less adjustment problems. And my wife never had great relationships with her stepfathers, but I met both of them, and I don't really like either one of them. Now, here's the deal. And that I hate to say it, and I'm not judging you, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't a good idea. But what you're going to find is that typically kids who are come from divorced families and have step parents, the odds say they're going to be a little more likely to have adjustment related problems, problems in school, problems in relationships, problems with drugs and alcohol and acting out. That does not mean, just like that graph we were showing earlier with the difference between males and female, this doesn't mean it's going to be a lot more differences, but you're going to see occasionally more incidences of this acting out behavior in kids who come from these blended kind of families. My mother is basically estranged to a degree. I fed me. Oh, I see. Wow. Okay. So Nicole is, I think, not to use you as an example, but Nicole is showing you that when you have these family breakups, there are some emotional fallouts, and I would say that Nicole's experience is probably typical for divorces. Relationships can be strained. Relationship lines have to be redrawn. Allegiances are often shifted. And so it's these kinds of problems that not with Nicole, she's got good self-regulation. Remember, we mentioned that on Tuesday as a protective factor in these kinds of situations. But kids who don't have the self-regulation that Nicole are going to start acting out in these types of difficult situations. All right, no, now you're in school. You are now learning about the joy and sadness associated with trying to develop a group of friends in school. I don't know about you, but it's always been a struggle for me trying to figure out where I fit in the greater social world of school and work. It's always been difficult for me trying to find a clique of friends that I can feel comfortable with, that I feel a part of. I've struggled with this my entire life. I moved around a lot as a kid. I went to 10 different schools before third grade. So for me, I was always the new kid. And finding cliques, finding a group of friends, finding where I stood in the pecking order of a group of kids was always difficult for me. But you know what? Every child has to negotiate this process when we go to school for the first time. You move away from your parents where you have this status in your family, and you go to this school with a bunch of people who are your peers, and you have to figure out how you fit in with this new groups. So peer status and peer groups become very important during this age. And children really learn how to function in adult non-filial relationships. They learn about reciprocity and peer interchanges. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. You have to do nice things to others if you want them to do nice things to you. As we move into these schools, we're going to start moving into maybe instead of having just one friend that we play with, but play groups of 2, 3, 4 people. And at school, we're going to be out on the playground, and we're not going to be watched as closely by our parents. Basically, we're adults in training. We're learning how to get along in our work world, so to speak. And what you're going to see is that these peer groups are going to change based upon gender differences. Biological, cultural, we don't know. But what you're going to see is that your boys and girls are definitely going to separate out by sexes as a general rule, not to say there aren't some cross-sex friendships, but what you're going to see is boys are going to play with boys, the girls are going to play with girls, and there are going to be social costs at breaking this rule. Gender role socialization is a thing, and so kids do it to each other. You play with boys if you're a boy, and you play boy games, and if you're a girl, you play with girls and you play girl games. Now, what you're going to see is that your boys are going to tend to run around in larger gang type groups, whereas your females are going to, as a general rule, play in smaller 1, 2, and 3 person groups. And I know these are gender socializations, and I hope and expect that at least 2 of you out there are going to say, no, Chris, I did it a little differently. Remember, these are general expectations that you may see among these groups. Now, one of the weird things is that you're going to find during school, we're going to begin to develop, if you will, status levels in class. We're going to start to figure out who people are in our larger groups. And we're going to develop niches and reputations. Now, if you think about it, in your family, you have a niche and a status. I'm the youngest child, I'm the oldest child, I'm the brother, I'm the sister, that's mom, that's dad. When you get to school, you have to sort of figure out how to organize yourself based upon status as well. And what you're going to find is that kids tend to sort of fall out into these generally recognizable groups that you'll see that begin in early childhood, in elementary school, and you're going to see these kinds of status groups are going to follow you pretty much through school. Some of your children are going to be the popular children, and you know what? They're the ones that everybody's going to like, and not a lot of them are going to dislike. I should actually mention, they sort of figured this out by asking children in classes, in these elementary class, to list who they liked best and who they liked least in school. So who do I like the best and who do I like the least? They found that there were some kids in the class that everybody liked and nobody dislikes. Are these traits that we inherently pass on to our children? I was an outlier based on this information. My younger daughter seems to be as well. Wow. You know what? I'm going to stop with this discussion and answer John's question. How people learn to fit into groups. These traits are personality to a certain degree is genetic, John, okay? Emotional control as a personality trait is certainly genetic, okay? The ability for self-efficacy, for to have high self-esteem are traits that may be genetic but are also culturally defined. Yes, some of this is genetic. Basically, children are born with basic tendencies, a desire for stimulation and an emotional reactivity. Those are sort of the genetic things. But what happens is, as you help your child in early childhood develop these good personality styles, remember, like being emotionally regulated, like having high self-efficacy, like providing your child with a good attachment base. If you do these 3 things, John, these are going to lead your child to have the kinds of behaviors that cause them to fall into one or another categories. So while these are genetic, the way you coach your child during their early childhood is going to give them these personality quality traits that allow them to be liked by the other kids. Now, these statuses are related on who you like in class and who you don't like. If your kid acts out and doesn't have emotional control and hits the other kids, nobody's going to like them. On the other hand, if your child has good emotional control, knows how to cooperate, has a good sense of empathy, understands their own emotion because you've engaged in emotional coaching, if your child has these good personality qualities, of course everybody's going to like them. So while we do have genetic tendencies, all Roddenberries are kind of shy and standoffish. Depending upon how you coach your child from 2 to 5, you can create a child with qualities that will help them be liked by the other children. Does that make sense? And I'm not saying being liked is the most important thing in life. You don't fit in. I'm not saying you're trying to be the most popular. But if you have nice interpersonal skills, good interpersonal skills, people are going to enjoy being around you. So I'm not saying going with the crowd, kissing butt, but I'm saying being easy to get along with, right? This is the coolest now, according to my 10 years. Okay, really? That's interesting, Imani. But what you're going to see is that there are some kids that stand out, everybody seems to like. Some children are going to be sort of be those average children that sort of nobody thinks about. Some are going to be those children that nobody really nominates one way or the other. They're the neglected children. You know what? They're going to be some children that everybody's going to dislike. And then you're going to have some children that some people really, really like and some people really, really dislike because their personality is so strong. The question is, which status did you fall in growing up? You know, I would say that for the most part, I was an average child. I definitely wasn't well known enough to be the popular child. And if I wasn't yeah, I would say I was probably the average child. You know, I had an average number of likes, but nobody really disliked me. But I don't think I was the king of my class, right? Now, here's the deal. We talk about emotional control as being a fundamental quality developed in early childhood that predicts positive academic achievement in high school, as well as school related and behavioral related problems. Why does this happen? Children with low emotional control uh, go to school and everybody dislikes them because they have low emotional control. This causes them not to have a good set of friends, which then sort of feeds into these feelings of low self esteem, which causes the child to act out even more and show even more negative emotional control. So, the thing is, having low emotional control causes your child to move into that category in school where nobody really wants to be around them. And this is going to in turn cause them to act out. You know, exactly. To the degree that I fit in and was popular, Ronique, it was because I was a good athlete. Yeah. And you know, there are qualities that you can develop in your child or that exist in children that help them fit in. You know, being the good athlete, having the nicest clothes, being really good looking, being tall. These are things. Well, honestly, I can tell, Ronnie, you've got a great personality. You're absolutely fun and enjoyable to be around. I could totally see where that would happen. You know, and so a good athlete, funny guy with good emotional control. I could see it where you probably did well in school. And, you know, you folks can see the importance of teaching your child no and teaching them how to share and how to think about their emotions and how to be good partners in early childhood. It's going to allow them to do well when they get into their larger social environment. Now, sometimes these rejected kids are going to engage in aggressive behavior. I don't know if any of you had a bully growing up, but I had a couple of bullies. The shortest kid in class, there were always a couple of people that wanted to try me. Fools. But bullies, unfortunately, are a part of life. And you know, you can bully with your fists and you can bully with your words. And bullying, your book describes as verbal or physical behavior intended to disturb someone less powerful. And you know what? 1/3 of all kids in 6th to 10th grades are going to have a bully, right? Now, most of the time, it's going to be one of those out of control boys with poor emotional control who takes their anger out on a less powerful child, right? And what they're usually going to do is they're going to they're usually going to bully someone who is younger than them, and it's typically boys are going to bully other boys. They're typically going to pick on the kids that are withdrawn, awkward, and shy. Typically, your bullies aren't going to pick on the confident kids. They're going to pick on the easy targets. And what you're going to see is that this begins to become a problem, especially as your kids move towards the end of early and middle childhood, puberty, and the pressures of middle school begin to kick in. This is when you're going to see it's going to be mostly boys, and it's going to be directed at younger other boys. Now, here's the thing. For some people, being the target of a bully makes you feel bad and sad. It's associated with a higher likelihood of thinking about hurting yourself and even attempting to hurt yourself. So bullying can be really bad for people who are the targets of brutal and excessive bullying. And these children that typically are bullied, because they're the kind of anxious, awkward, withdrawn children, this is only going to exacerbate the anxiety and the sadness associated with these kinds of feelings. And some people really never get over the experience of being bullied as a kid. Now, my mother, father, good God, walk with your chest and head up, give yourself a sense of pride and strength so no one, the bullies always picked on the weak kids, and it takes a lot of nerve to stand up to a bully, but usually one altercation, even if you get your ass whooped, will cause a bully to find somebody else. Now, I do not want to minimize the impact of bullying. I do not want to minimize how difficult it is to face a bully and the negative impacts of bullying. But I will tell you, like Ron says, bullies typically are pushed back by confidence and by strength and being confident yourself. And although bullies are bad, I will say some of the bullies in my life helped toughen me up by teaching me how not to care so much about what other people did, and by learning that sometimes you just have to fight back. But this is a psychology class, so I'm supposed to be talking just about the negative impacts associated with bullying. Now, what you are going to find is that females do engage in bullying too, but typically your female bullying is going to be more verbal than physical. So just like your females are going to engage in more verbal aggression than physical aggression, and your boys are going to engage in more physical aggression than verbal aggression. When it comes to your bullying behavior, your girls are going to bully verbally, and your boys are going to bully physically. I remember in 8th grade, this guy, my best friend Dave, had these big old ears, and Andy Harkins, a bigger boy who'd failed a couple grades, used to come by and thump my friend Dave in the ear every morning. He'd come up behind Dave and thump him in the ear. And that was his way of bullying my friend Dave. And then one day in 9th grade, Dave turned around and punched the absolute dog out of Andy Harkins. And that was the end of the thumping. Okay. All right. That's all I have to say. Yeah, culture does have a lot to say about bullying. And, as we get older and move through the later parts of this book, we're going to be talking less about biology and genetics and more about the effect of culture and environment and family and social structure. So that's a good point. And I think you folks are starting to notice that because you're bringing up these cultural points to me more regularly. Okay, that's all I have to say. The norm back home, bullying is good. Yeah, yeah, bullying. Sometimes bullying can help you develop. But, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but bullying does exist. All right, folks, that's all I have to say. Don't forget, do your discussion board tonight by 11:59. Your next homework is due tomorrow by 11:59, and I will have the next 2 modules worth of homeworks available for you by tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. Hey, folks, take care. Have a great day, and I will see you next week on Tuesday. Take care.